Hello and welcome back to the FM22 Premier League years. We are on to Season 5, which is going to be the 2026-27 season. Before we properly jump into it though, just a little reminder of what happened at the end of the last video. The 2025-26 season ending with Chelsea breaking Manchester City's run of Premier League titles with 95 points, 6 clear of Liverpool actually. We also saw Leeds and Leicester gain Champions League football for the first time in this save. Leeds by position and Leicester by winning the Europa League final against Manchester United. The three teams we will not be seeing for this season are Crystal Palace, Norwich, and surprisingly Brighton, who actually came 10th the season before and then relegated last season. But the three teams we will be welcoming to the Premier League for this new 26-27 season. We start with AFC Bournemouth making an immediate return to the top flight. They are managed by Scott Parker still. He has never left. Bournemouth have had full confidence in him. He has brought them straight back again. If we take a look at the league positions, they came second, so no need for the playoffs this time as they required a couple of seasons ago. But Bournemouth straight back, still rocking with Scott Parker. Looking elsewhere on the newly promoted sides, we're back with Reading again. They're going to have a second crack at the whip as well. They spent, what's that, last time they were in was 2024, so they spent 2 years outside the Premier League. In fact, they almost suffered double relegation. They came 20th in the 24-25 season, but they make the playoffs last year under Benny McCarthy, by the way. So he's going to get his second shot at the Premier League after previously being the Blackburn manager. Of course, he formerly played for Blackburn, so that was quite a fun one. But now Reading, we'll take a look at their playoff run. They had a 6-3 aggregate win over Stoke. And then they actually beat Blackburn in extra time in the playoff final, including a 90th minute penalty in order to take it to extra time in the first place. So Blackburn, who are going to be in the Europa Conference League this season after winning the League Cup, will be a championship side. The question is whether I do actually look at how they get on, because technically this is just a Premier League watching save. I'm going to give Blackburn a little bit of benefit of the doubt. I will have a look at how they get on in the Europa Conference as we go along. The third team, I did notice them as we were going. West Ham, unsurprisingly, are straight back into the Premier League. They don't miss a beat. They win the championship under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. No problems for West Ham. They're back. We take a look at everybody else in the league. We had Burnley just about staying up, along with Southampton, who are going into a second season back in the top flight. We've got sides like Fulham and Sheffield United, who have now been here for 3 and 5 years, I think. Brentford going into their 4th season in the Premier League. So we've got some teams that are becoming relatively consistent. We've got mid-table sides like Everton and Wolves that have not done a whole lot in this save so far. So we'll see if they can kick on a little bit. But June is just kind of to give a little bit of a breakdown on how the league looks going into the proper transfer area of the summer. We can, however, have a look to see any manager movements. So it's just the two that were described previously at the end of last video. Jurgen Klopp gone from Manchester City. Eddie Howe gone from Newcastle. They haven't hired new managers yet. Our next stop-off point will be September, which is when we'll find out who ends up taking those jobs. We'll have a quick look at transfers and just see if any big transfers have gone down at the start of this season. Chelsea are back again. They seem to do one every single season, and it's before the league ticks over to the next season that it goes into. Eduardo Camavinga is a Premier League player for Chelsea. £113 million on the 23-year-old French midfielder. Chelsea are becoming near on ridiculous. Camavinga has been an absolute superstar for the past 3 seasons, that is. I mean, even when he was sort of hopping between the first team and the second team, other than that one random bad performance there, he's been pretty darn good for Real Madrid. He now brings his talents to Stamford Bridge. Chelsea not looking to pass up this Premier League title anytime soon. And it really doesn't look like they're going to let it go anytime soon. I think they really are going to be a force for a very long time. Next biggest transfer is Jarrod Bowen, who Manchester City bought last season from a then relegated West Ham. He didn't play a single game, and now they've sold him to Bournemouth and might make a profit, maybe. I mean, they spent 33 million on him. They've got an initial 31.5. Could rise to 37.5 from Bournemouth. Maybe a profit. It's another one of those transfers that just doesn't make any sense. But Bournemouth get a very good player as they look to stay up more convincingly this year. Any other summer 2026 transfers that we can find early on? We find Alexander Nubel. Okay. Yeah, the ex-Bayern Munich goalkeeper. Hardly played for Bayern. Actually went back to Bayern. Oh, no, he didn't go back to Bayern. He was on loan at Monaco. Okay. So he came in at Bayern, didn't really play. Couple decent loan spells with Monaco. Now joins Aston Villa for £21 million. Again, I really like the side that Villa have built, but these past couple seasons, they've dropped off a bit and haven't really performed too well. I am expecting them to do a little bit better this season. Or I'd like to think they can. They also actually bring in Samuel Chukwueze as well, the Nigerian winger from Ajax, for 19 million. So Villa really starting to spend the money and doing it early as well. Chukwueze and Nubel, I think they're two really good signings as well by Villa. I really think they should be making a push. Obviously, we're still very early in the summer, so we don't know what else is going to happen. We get Thomas Handel sold by Norwich. He was leading, or he was up in one of the defensive categories, I believe, last season for Norwich. And now joins Fulham for 15.5 million. Fulham looking to kick on as well. They had a really good season last year, up towards mid-table. So they make Thomas Handel their biggest move so far. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot else. We're already down to around the 10 million mark, and we've only seen 4 players so far in this summer transfer window. We may well just wait until we get to the end of September, when the summer transfer window will close, and we'll get a full page of new transfers without the 2025 ones mixed in, or January 26 ones. But this is every team that will be in the top flight for this season. We're going to jump ahead to September now. We'll take a look at the transfers that go on and the group stages in Europe as well. We've now gone through the summer transfer window. We are on to the 3rd of September. And we're going to start off by taking a look at the European groups for the English clubs. As I mentioned, just kind of out of respect for Blackburn winning the League Cup, whilst they aren't a Premier League side, I will still take a look at how they get on in the Europa Conference League. They have been drawn into Group D alongside Zenit, Steaua Bucharest and Mol Fehovar. I think this may well be a bit of a struggle for Blackburn with FCSB and Zenit in the group. I would imagine Zenit to top it, maybe FCSB in second and Blackburn potentially third, but they could push for second. We then get to the Europa League, where there are 2 Premier League representatives. Arsenal are the first to appear. They have Group B alongside Olympiacos, Slavia Prague, and Ireland's Shamrock Rovers. Well done to them on making the Europa League group stages. That's a hell of an effort. I'd imagine Arsenal to top this group. I think Olympiacos will potentially be second. In fact, I think the order that it's been drawn in is the order that this group will end. By the way, for a second year out of the last 3, Real Madrid are playing Europa League football. I mean, better than the 23-24 season when they were sixth, but a fifth place finish after winning the league in between. Real Madrid being very inconsistent. They have Europa League group stage football again, and they got Marseille in their groups. That's certainly not easy. But back to the Premier League side of it, Manchester United get Group F. They will take on the Young Boys, Dynamo Kyiv, and RC Lens of France. Again, another group that I think the Premier League side should top it. Man United should finish top. Let's give Dynamo Kyiv second place. And let's say Lens in third and Young Boys to be bottom of that group. And where it gets really interesting for Premier League representation, the 5 English sides that will be playing Champions League group stage football this season. Leeds United drawn in Group A alongside Barcelona, Shakhtar Donetsk and Wolfsburg. Barca to top the group, I think, is a fairly simple shout to make. They've been pretty good over the past couple of years. Wolfsburg, Shakhtar and Leeds is going to be a very interesting trio of teams, though. I'm going to go for Leeds to come second. Let's put faith in the Premier League. Leeds second. We'll go Shakhtar third and Wolfsburg to come at bottom of that group. Leicester City take up Group C alongside RB Leipzig, Real Sociedad and Victoria Pilsen. I think Leicester may well have another shot at winning the Europa League. I reckon Sociedad to top the group. I've liked Sociedad's story so far, even though it was kind of just 1 year where they sold a bunch of players, got a ton of money, and then brought in some players. I'm going to go with Sociedad to top it, Leipzig second, and Leicester in third. Manchester City are drawn in Group D. They are alongside AC Milan, Krasnodar, and Feyenoord. I'm going to go with Manchester City to top that group with AC Milan second, Feyenoord third, and Krasnodar in fourth. Group E will see Chelsea with Juventus, AEK Athens, and Rangers once again making the Champions League. I'm going to go for Chelsea to top the group because they just seem like they're going to be insane this year. Juventus in second. Let's get Rangers third and AEK fourth. And finally, for Premier League representation, Group F has Liverpool alongside Ajax, Sevilla and Ludogorets. Going to say Liverpool to top the group once again. I'm going to put Ajax in second. In fact, let's put the group as it's pictured there. Sevilla in third and Ludogorets at the bottom. The next port of call is to check managerial changes. And there's been a few over the summer, which is very interesting. So we knew Eddie Howe and Jurgen Klopp were gone. They were sacked at the end of the previous season. Eddie Howe is replaced by Simone Inzaghi at Newcastle. If we ever get this to load, here we go. So Inzaghi comes over from Inter Milan after 5 years there. Obviously, it's been a theme. Italian managers coming over to the Premier League. Inzaghi now the latest in that list. And Jurgen Klopp is replaced at Manchester City. What a story this is. Vincent Kompany, Captain Fantastic, returns to the Etihad as manager of the club that he captained for so long. Just 40 years of age. This could seriously be a very long-term job. And it's just such a good story to see Kompany back at Manchester City. Those are not the only changes, however. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst leaves West Ham and Mikel Arteta leaves Arsenal on the same day as each other. Because Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has gone to be the Holland national team manager and Mikel Arteta has gone to be the Spanish national team manager. 2026, there's been a World Cup, so we're going to go take a look at how that actually went. The 2026 World Cup was lifted by Portugal. It was hosted by Mexico, USA and Canada. But Portugal end up dispatching Brazil in the final 4-1, which is an incredible result for a Portuguese side that is very much moving on to some of its younger players now. Rafael Leao with a hat-trick in the World Cup final. Pretty sure Tammy Abraham got a hat-trick in the 2022 World Cup final for England. So impressively, after only one person ever scoring a World Cup final hat-trick, There's now been 2 in 2 World Cup finals. That is pretty impressive. Brazil got a late consolation goal through Arthur Cabral, but it was already 4-0 by then, and Portugal just completely dominate. We look at the semi-finals. Sweden actually finishing 3rd. What? They got beat by Brazil 3-0 in the semi-final, but what a run by Sweden. Portugal only came through against Spain on penalties. See the likes of Italy getting beat 5-1 by Portugal. This Portugal side is something scary. Norway making the quarterfinals as well. Serbia making the quarterfinals. So England didn't make it that far at all. Did they sack their manager? Is that why Pep's gone? You may have noticed Liverpool are looking for a manager. So yes, as pointed out, Pep Guardiola has left Liverpool only about a week and a half ago. They have a caretaker manager right now. Pep has actually gone to be manager of Juventus. He's stayed in club management. I did wonder why that move was so much later than the other two. Guardiola decides he hasn't given Italy a go yet, and he wants another major title. He's going after the Serie A crown now, which leaves Liverpool scrambling for a new manager early in the Premier League season. And with the tick over into the new season, and now having gone through the whole of the summer transfer window, we get to look at what transfers have gone down throughout the rest of the summer. And the biggest 2 moves are players going out of the Premier League. The top transfer at currently top transfer at £59 million sees Rafinha leave Newcastle to head to the San Siro with AC Milan. Rafinha is now 29 years of age, so actually that's pretty good business for Newcastle. You see, just over 100 games for Newcastle, and he played pretty well, but as mentioned, turns 30 in December, so that's pretty good money for a player who's going to be hitting 30 pretty soon. The second transfer out is Rodri leaving Manchester City. Again, a player who's actually just turned 30, heading to Real Madrid for £56 million, but could potentially rise to the biggest deal of the window to £67 million. Rodri, long-time Manchester City player, playing near on every game each season and averaging over a 7, including the 23-24 season, where he averaged a 7.35, which is absolutely incredible. Nearly 250 Premier League appearances for Man City. He moves on back to Spain. We then find the actual biggest transfer within the Premier League, and it's Noni Madueke, who actually I saw him playing for the England under-21s very recently, and I think he was awarded man of the match against Andorra. He moved to Manchester United quite early on in the save, actually. Yeah, 2022, literally the start of the save when we jumped in on this. A £33 million move to Manchester United. He got a reasonable amount of football without ever standing out. I think a lot of these were bench appearances. They actually weren't. The 27-game season, 14 were substitute appearances. And then the 10 were substitute appearances. So he was starting to drop out of favour at Man United. He gets a £56 million move to Spurs. Has made 3 appearances. Hasn't really kicked on yet. He hasn't had a top season yet as Madueke, but still the 3rd biggest transfer and the biggest one in the Premier League itself. Manchester City back within the spending. They've made a couple of signings in Brian Mbeumo from Hertha Berlin, the French forward. Is he a striker or a winger? He's more a winger. I have definitely heard of him. Brian Mbeumo's the Brentford player. Of course he is. Wow, okay. Brian Mbeumo's had a decent bit of development then in this save. He's also got international caps for France. How did he do for Brentford? I didn't really see much of him, to be honest. And 7 goals in his Premier League season wasn't bad. Hertha Berlin then got really good performances out of him. And he comes over to Manchester City. hasn't played yet because he was literally signed 4 days ago. That would be a good explanation. Newcastle appearing twice in a row on signings. They have brought in Morato, a Brazilian centre-back from Benfica, and Tommaso Pobega, 27-year-old Italian midfielder. I was going to say using the Rafinha money, but they have definitely spent a lot more than the Rafinha money. Liverpool are here on transfers as well. They bring in Mohamed Diomande. Now, that is a very good attacking midfielder right there. Starts at Nordsjælland, went to Borussia Dortmund for 8.75 million. Was pretty good there, had a pretty good 24-25 season. Now comes over to Liverpool, and a couple of assists early on in his Premier League career. So a good start for Mohamed Diomande. Good to see him in the Premier League. We see Donny van de Beek leaving to PSG. Man City appearing again with Clement Lenglet. This one's interesting, though. I said potentially Liverpool's new centre-back partnership was going to be a Belgian pairing. It's not, because they have Sebastian Bornau, and they bought Pascal Struijk last season. However, they've immediately sold Pascal Struijk to Benfica for 31.5 million. So now, what are their centre-back options outside of Bornau? Van Dijk is still here, but he is unhappy because he got injured and it took him out. It didn't take him... Oh yeah, it's taken him out of the Holland setup for this set of fixtures. It didn't take him out of the World Cup, so at least he had that. But, I mean, Joe Gomez is still here. There's not a lot centre-back-wise. Currently, Fabinho, now at 32 years of age, has shifted back to centre-back. So Liverpool having to go a little bit makeshift at the back. Gomez currently playing right-back. Liverpool may not be in the best position for this season. Pep's just ditched them, and they've certainly not done much in the window other than Diomande, which I did say I think that is a really good signing, so it's not too bad. Thierry Small moves to Spurs. Correa leaves. We see some more players come in. Jamie Shackleton going to Real Madrid from Leeds. That's a pretty interesting one. And Gonzalo Estevez, a recent Brighton signing, on deadline day, heading to Newcastle. Okay, Marcus Edwards leaves relegated Crystal Palace for Sheffield United, and Neil Maupay leaves relegated Norwich for Reading. We're still at pretty high sums of transfers. We're still actually in the 25 million. Sheffield United's biggest move is Jakub Jankto, 30-year-old Czech player who is kind of winger / attacking midfielder. Long-time player for Getafe, 180 appearances for them. He's been pretty good for Getafe, but a 30-year-old for 25.5 million, interesting move by Sheffield United. But they have also brought in Morten Thorsby, another 30-year-old midfielder, this time from Blackburn. So Sheffield United going experience to try and help them out, though they did actually sell Todd Cantwell to Brentford. So that's where a bit of that money came from. You see, Jordan Zamora actually returns to the Premier League. He led a defensive stat last season, and I can't remember which one it was. It may have been blocks. So he was pretty decent defensively. He joins Southampton for £25 million. You see, Aaron Hickey leave relegated Brighton to head to Leicester, and Marcel Ruiz leaving Brighton to join Reading. So again, teams going down, some of their players shifting on to other Premier League clubs. Ole Aina leaves Blackburn for Southampton, as does Cucho Hernandez in regard to Norwich. He goes to Southampton as well. This is an interesting one from Villa. Emi Martinez is gone. He has headed off to Fiorentina. So what are Villa looking like in goal? Yeah, so obviously they brought in Alexander Nubel early on in the window. He takes over as the number one. They feel comfortable to sell Emi Martinez. Have we got much else? Bellerin is gone. Just trying to see if I'm not missing anything. There's a lot of players out compared to players in. Like Lewis Cook leaves Man City. He's off to Holland to play for Ajax. Just see if there are any interesting names. Hanno Masengo, who was an early signing by Sheffield United. He heads off to Fulham. Cole Palmer is quite an interesting one. He heads to Leeds. Has had a bit of game time at Manchester City, over 50 Premier League appearances, without ever really breaking into the first team properly. He's going to be a really interesting player for Leeds, though. Yeah, straight in important player. I'm going to be intrigued to see how Cole Palmer gets on. Can we find any more interesting names? Mavididi actually immediately leaves Brentford for Championship Norwich. Brentford get Eric Gutierrez in return. Christian Pavon leaves Leeds. Is there any Arsenal actually making the signing? We haven't seen too much of Arsenal, I don't think, in the transfer window. They bring in 20-year-old Swedish wonderkid Rooney Bardkey. I have not got a single clue how to pronounce that name. From FC Copenhagen. He was sort of starting to break into the Copenhagen team. Was doing really well for them. Arsenal move £11.5 million for him. So we'll see how he gets on. Hopefully he develops. A player that won't be developing in the Premier League, though, is Hannibal. He is gone. Made 38 top-flight Premier League appearances. Was loaned out last season to Udinese, and they make the move permanent for £10 million. Okay, so no development for Hannibal in this save. Sometimes he can be amazing. In this case, he hasn't really worked out. Ibrahima Diallo leaves relegated Palace. He joins Sheffield United. It does seem like the game, especially defensively, is regarding the statistics the players put up, because we're seeing a lot of relegated top defenders actually moving on to other Premier League clubs, which is good. We see Fred moving to West Ham. I actually missed that Fred went to Sheffield United. Fred's been at Sheffield United for 4 seasons, and I completely missed it. Now an £8 million move to West Ham for him, 33 years of age. Go on, Fred. Live your life. We find Wendell leaving Arsenal. I don't think there's going to be too much to look at. David Brooks heading off to Italy. Chancellor Mbemba to Scotland. Davinson Sanchez to Holland. It seems that a lot more players are going out. Leicester actually receiving a player in Santiago Rojas in selling Musawage to Sporting Lisbon. Burnley, we hadn't seen them. They bring in Lucas Toussaint. He is 29 years of age, a pretty good midfielder. Obviously, at 29, you're going to get a good 2-3 years out of him. So hopefully he can perform well for Burnley and give them a shot at staying up. Otherwise, let's have a quick look at the Premier League table and see how things are going. Obviously, still very, very early on in the Premier League season. No team is 3 for 3, which is quite interesting. The 2 best sides so far with 2 wins and a draw each. Leeds United top the Premier League early doors. Wins over Spurs and Brentford, along with a draw with Burnley. And then Arsenal keeping them company at the top. They have a win over Sheffield United and West Ham, along with a draw with Bournemouth. We've got a lot of teams on 6 points, from Manchester City in 3rd, all the way down to Sheffield United in 10th, mixed in there. Chelsea, who have already lost a game. They lost 3-2 at Old Trafford. And Man United have lost a game. They lost at Bramall Lane 2-1. So it seems like all the teams on 6 were kind of beating each other. If we look to the bottom end of the table, Brentford and Southampton are yet to get off the mark. They are 3 defeats from 3. Southampton losing to Wolves, Sheffield United and Aston Villa. Brentford losing to Manchester United, Liverpool and Leeds. So maybe if you're Brentford, you're not too concerned. If you're Southampton, I think there's a bit of concern there. And filling out the bottom 3, Everton with just the 1 point in a 3-3 draw at Craven Cottage against Fulham. That's quite the spectacle. Bournemouth down the bottom, Spurs down in 16th currently. Just 1 win and 2 defeats. They won at home against Burnley, but losses at Manchester City and Leeds. So maybe not too much concern, though. If you want to be making Europe, you've got to get some results along the way. Villa's still just not doing well, 14th. But again, only 3 games in. Reading with a much better start, which is good to see. Other promoted sides, West Ham, just kind of chilling. Bournemouth, kind of chilling. But they're all out of the relegation zone right now. Really, really quick look at the player stats. Haaland tops goal scoring with 5 in 3. Salah top in the average rating. Fernandes and Ugarte top assists with 4 each. Ramsdale has 3 clean sheets in 3 games for Arsenal, which is pretty impressive. But what we're going to do now, we are going to jump forward to November. We'll have a look at if there are any managerial changes, and we'll get properly into the player stats 10 games into the season. We're now 2 months further along. We are on to the 3rd of November. Firstly, to take a look at managerial changes, Liverpool ended up hiring Stefano Pioli from AC Milan, another Italian manager coming to the Premier League. I've lost count of the amount of Italian managers coming over to manage in the top flight of England. But here's another one in Stefano Pioli. We then see, what was the next one after that? We saw Sean Dyche sacked by Brentford on just the 19th of September. That was a very, very quick sacking from Brentford. We saw that they had lost their opening 3 games of the season. Obviously, it didn't get any better in the next couple of weeks. They made the move to sack Dyche, and they brought in Benny McCarthy from Reading. I know he was doing okay, and he got 4 points from the first 3 games. Benny McCarthy ditches Reading to join Brentford. Obviously feels they have a better chance of staying up. Does, however, mean that Reading are currently looking for a new manager. Billy McKinlay is the caretaker. We'll find out who they end up hiring in the January stop-off point. But what that does mean now is this is how the Premier League table looks 10 games in, and Leeds are here again. But welcome to the title battle, Newcastle. You've woken up again. Obviously, under the management of Simone Inzaghi now instead of Eddie Howe, who was sacked at the end of last season, actually. But it is Chelsea that topped the way by just a singular point over 3 sides in Leeds, Newcastle and Arsenal. Liverpool, Man City and Spurs have actually recovered up to 7th. They're not too far behind, but they're not exactly close either. We take a look at the bottom of the table. Just one side without a win in the Premier League in the first 10 games, and it is Southampton. I did say that they would be slightly concerned after their first 3 games. Their only points so far, draws with Everton and Reading. Reading actually up in 11th. So Benny McCarthy really was doing a hell of a job before he left for Brentford, who are actually 18th and 10 points behind. Brentford probably do have a better setup than Reading, and they are more prepped for Premier League football. I think this is Brentford's 4th straight season. But still, that's an interesting move from McCarthy. Brentford 3 points adrift of Everton, Bournemouth and Wolves at the moment. Everton and Wolves just seem to be going backwards. And then they sack the manager, and then they go forwards again. And then a new season comes around and they go backwards again. Fulham also actually down the bottom on just 4 points. I thought Fulham would do better. What is nice to see so far is that the 3 sides that came up from the Championship, all currently outside the relegation zone. And if you picked Reading as the side to be top of those 3 sides, you're lying. But they are right now. They're just a point clear of West Ham. And they're actually only 2 points behind Manchester City and Spurs. Reading for Europe, maybe? I mean, Blackburn are in Europe, so why the heck not? What we can do now in the November stop-off point is we can take a first look at the statistics of the Premier League so far this season. We jump down to goals. We find Chelsea with 23, Manchester City with 20, and Leeds with 19 up in 3rd. We take a look at expected goals for. Leeds actually top that at 17 alongside Chelsea, and then Villa and Leicester in the 15s, though they are just mid-table. Villa have recovered to 9th, by the way, so a little bit better for them. They're on the right track. They're going the right way. If we look to goals conceded, we actually find Arsenal with the best defence so far in the Premier League, conceding just 6. Newcastle with 7, and West Ham on their return to the top flight, conceding just 9 in their first 10 games. So a really good defensive job by West Ham so far. We take a look at expected goals against. It's actually Sheffield United at 16, and they've only conceded 10, and they're currently 12th in the Premier League. Riding the luck a little bit, but they're doing okay. Fulham, well, there's the reason that Fulham are in trouble. That's a very high XG. Everton also high up there, but a lot of teams in the 15s. Villa are even in there, and they're still 9th in the league, so I guess there's not too much to read into on that one. Going into the individual stats, we start with goals, and Erling Haaland tops that chart with 9 in 10. He's one clear of Vinicius and Gabriel Barbosa, so the Brazilian forwards getting up there. And Kylian Mbappe on 7. Lukaku's cooled down a little bit. He's got 4 in 10, one of those games being a substitute appearance. We've still got some of the older guys in here. Harry Kane, Mo Salah, Alvaro Morata at Wolves at the moment in the Premier League. He's got 3 as well. We see familiar names in Vitinha and Jefferson at the top as well. And Ivan Toney actually popping up. He's got 5 in his first 10. Gabriel Barbosa leading XG with 4.32. So no one's got a particularly high XG, but we've still got quite a few players with a high amount of goals so far, which is quite interesting. We pop down to assists. We see Bruno Fernandes with 8 in 10 games. That is a heck of a start. With Manuel Ugarte in behind on 6. We saw them both get off to really good starts. Fernandes has kept it going a little bit better. Cole Palmer up with 4 assists. Said it would be interesting to see how he got on with Leeds. He's up there on assists already alongside Kai Havertz, Kylian Mbappe and Nicolas Capaldo, who is not a player I am familiar with. Burnley have literally signed him this summer for 16.25 million. So I think I would have scrolled past him, but I didn't really pay him any mind. However, he has started really, really well for Burnley. So well done, Mr. Capaldo, a tireless midfielder. Look at that, 17 stamina, 17 work rate. That is a very hard-working player right there. So the likes of Bruno Guimaraes playing for West Ham. De Bruyne is still making assists at 35. Salah at 34. Diamande, he's added an extra little assist in there as well. Jump to key passes. We actually find that Mohamed Diamande is leading that stat with Raheem Sterling just in behind. And Harry Pickering's back again because he loves being up there in statistics whilst getting relegated. Although actually, Reading are 11th at the moment. So maybe he gets more than one Premier League season in a row. We shift down to chances created. We find Bruno Fernandes topping that one as well. He has 9, with Kevin De Bruyne in behind on 7. And then Yassine Adli on 6 in 3rd place. So another Burnley player. And this is why Burnley are doing a little bit better this season. They've just got more creativity about them, which is really what they needed. And Capaldo as well being here. And Lucas Torreira starting to create some chances as well. So it's good to see Burnley actually having a bit more of an attacking personality under Dean Smith. He's decided to add a little bit of an attacking mentality to that side. We go to defensive statistics. Vitaly Mykolenko leading in tackles 1 with Malero Bogard and James Justin there again. This man is just in every tackling stat ever. Key tackles is led by Kevin Alvarez, a Mexican right back playing for Brentford. He only came in this season for £8.5 million. Another player who started really well in his career in the Premier League. He is 1 key tackle ahead of the likes of Reece James. Harry Pickering's here again. Valentin Rosier, who is somebody we saw with Manchester United, I believe. Yeah, he's come back to the Premier League in a just flat-out player exchange with Monaco. That's quite interesting. So just to add a bit of clarity to the player exchange, it was actually in the Christian Pavon sale, which I did mention in the September stop-off. Didn't realise Valentin Rosier was the man coming the other way. And he has started very well for Leeds. Was kind of bit part for Man United, but Leeds actually get him they are handed 18 million to take him, I guess? No, it wasn't 18, it was something like 11. They're handed money to take him, which they will more than happily accept if he's going to play that well for them. A few stats with a couple guys leading them, but clearances, Tom McIntyre already almost up at 100 for Fulham. He's still really good defensively. He's also leading shots blocked. Ollie Aina leads the league in fouls in his first season with Southampton. We get into goalkeepers. Clean sheets being led still by Aaron Ramsdale. Has only kept 3 in the last 7 after 3 and 3. Still going well. And Erguson Sakir is in second with 5. We do find Alisson and Ederson tied in third place alongside a few other goalkeepers in Mendy, Benitez and Musso. We look to saves held. We've got a couple guys level in Antonio Adan and Joe Bursic. Saves parried, again 2 guys level in David Raya and Odysseus Vuchodamos. But we'll get to the expected goals prevented stat, which is my new favourite stat, especially for goalkeepers. And Walter Benitez actually tops that one at 6.03 expected goals prevented. And Nubel, in his first season with Villa, is actually in second place. So Alexander Nubel playing very well for Aston Villa. We've got Juan Musso there in third, as he's having a much improved season for Leicester after a bit of a shaky last season. We look to the bottom of the list, and actually some surprising names again. Alvaro Fernandez in 20th has conceded 4 more goals than XG expected. And Joe Bursic, who's been so good for the past couple of seasons with Fulham, and even when he was at Crystal Palace when they got relegated, Bursic was the standout player, has conceded 3 more than expected. But then you also see Ederson and Andre Onana conceding more than you'd expect. It's very interesting. Alisson's only 14th as well. He's conceded roughly what you would expect. Mendy's only on a 1 prevented. It's interesting to see that it's the likes of Benitez, Nubel and Musso topping that one. That is going to do our November stop-off point. Next time we jump in will be early January, where the transfer window will open, and will be roughly 19 or 20 games into the Premier League season, and we'll get a better idea of where everyone is. We're now gone forward to the 1st of January. We're into 2027, and to start with, we can take a look at how the European groups have gone for the English clubs. As previously mentioned, Blackburn, not a Premier League side, but are in the Europa Conference League, so we'll give them a look anyway. And actually, I got this group horribly wrong. They're in Group D, and Blackburn have actually topped it, meaning they get to go straight into the second knockout round. They've gone through with Molfehovar of Hungary, a side I have to admit I've never heard of. But they have done a brilliant job to get through, ahead of Zenit and FCSB, who are, well, I would think 2 bigger clubs, but what a time from Molfehovar. They actually only win twice. They win at home against Blackburn, and they actually won in St. Petersburg, which is an incredible result, and the result that got them through as well. A few draws in there and a loss at Ewood Park. But Blackburn advance pretty well, actually. We then go to the Europa League group stage, where there are 2 Premier League sides in Arsenal and Manchester United. We can see straight away in Group B, Arsenal top it with 15 points ahead of Slavia Prague and Olympiacos, who both got 10. Slavia Prague going through by 1 goal. I think it's goal difference in the Europa League rather than head-to-head record. But that is unbelievably close. Shamrock Rovers, unfortunately, just get absolutely trounced. Arsenal had a 4-0 and a 2-0 over them. A couple 2-0 wins over Slavia Prague. Arsenal do actually lose in Greece against Olympiacos 2-0, but it was not enough for Olympiacos to get through. Arsenal top the group. They will come in at the second knockout round. Manchester United, same thing for them. They top the group. They only pick up 12 points, but they actually don't lose a game. They have 3 draws in there. They go through with Dynamo Kiev, who are only a point behind them. So not as comfortable for United. They had 2 draws with Kiev and 1 with RC Lens, who finished bottom of the group with only 2 points. It's a bit of a bad result there. But United and Arsenal will advance straight through to the second knockout round. And finally, for the Champions League, we look to Group A, and we see that Leeds, unfortunately, will not progress in the Champions League, though we'll have to nip back to the Europa League for their first knockout round, because Leeds will be in that, so they still have a chance at European glory with the Europa League. They end up finishing behind Shakhtar Donetsk and Barcelona, but Shakhtar actually topping the group by 4 goals. Both teams on 10 points. Leeds end up with 8, 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats. Did they just share them out? No, they had a real mix. Leeds actually beat Barcelona at Ellen Road, so a very high-profile night there for Leeds, but they slipped into the Europa League. Anyway, Leicester actually make the Champions League knockout stages. It's what they did in 2016-17 when they had their one and only Champions League season. And they do it again, though this time it's second place in the group, 1 point behind RB Leipzig, but 2 ahead, more importantly, of Real Sociedad. Group D and Manchester City are completely dominant as they run a 6-for-6. That includes, wow, look at that for a group stage. 18 goals for, 0 goals conceded. 4-0 wins over AC Milan and Krasnodar. 3-0 over Feyenoord and AC Milan. 2-0 over Krasnodar and Feyenoord. My goodness me. That is intimidating from Manchester City. Chelsea also run up 6, and they scored 20 goals, although 4 conceded. Juve go through with them. Chelsea, on the score side of things, had a 5-0 win at home against AEK Athens. A couple 3-0s over Rangers. They put 4 past Juve at Stamford Bridge in a 4-2. And then we look to Liverpool, who are the final Premier League side in the Champions League group stages. They top their group as well. There is a defeat in there, a 2-1 loss at Sevilla, but they still top the group by 2 points ahead of said Sevilla, and they advance through as well. So nipping back into the Europa League to see Leeds' fate in the first knockout round, they will take on Dynamo Kiev of Ukraine. It should be a tricky fixture. Kiev have been a regular in the Champions League, more than Leeds anyway. But should be a bit of a tricky one, but I think Leeds can come through that. And then the 4 Premier League sides representing England in the Champions League knockout stages. Manchester City will take on Sevilla. Sevilla did beat Liverpool at home, so it's not going to be the easiest of fixtures for Man City, but I think they should still advance through pretty easily. Chelsea take on, more Spanish opposition in Atletico Madrid. Chelsea is so overpowered, though, at this point that I think they can pretty much destroy anybody. Liverpool will play Barcelona. Now, that was the tricky situation with Barca coming second in their group. So Liverpool end up drawing the bad straw, but I think they'll still be okay. I think Liverpool can come through that. And then Leicester, after finishing second in their Champions League group, will have to play Bayern Munich, one of the strongest teams in the world in this save. I think that's going to be the end of the road for Leicester. They've done well to just make the knockout stages in the first place, but I think the road's going to end there. And now with Europe out of the way, we can get back to the Premier League. And since our last stop off, there have been 2 more managerial changes. 2 managers sacked. Fulham sacking Onda Caravelli on the 25th of November. And they've replaced him with Josip Ilicic, who, only retired from playing like 2 years ago. And he is almost instantly into being a Premier League manager. So Ilicic has transitioned over really well to management. There's been a manager for like a year and a bit with Benevento and then Torino. Comes over to Fulham, so we'll see how Ilicic gets on as a manager. Wolves on the 2nd of December removing Ange Postecoglou. That doesn't surprise me. I didn't rate that hiring in the first place. And they have recently just hired Eddie Howe, who of course was sacked by Newcastle at the end of last season. Feels like a pretty good hiring to me. but we'll see how he gets on. And we'll see why Fulham and Wolves were sacking managers. So here we go. This is the Premier League table, and there are three sides looking in a lot of trouble at the bottom. We can see why Fulham have changed manager. They are bottom on 11 points, but Brentford also just 11 points. But they've already made a managerial change. Benny McCarthy came in not too long ago, and Southampton still down the bottom as well, though they are newly promoted for this season. They're 4 points adrift of Bournemouth, and Bournemouth have a game in hand. Wolves 16th, that's why their managerial changes come. But West Ham and Reading still doing pretty well, looking like they could well stay up this season. And then we look to the top of the table. Chelsea, 10 points clear of Liverpool and Arsenal, though both sides do have a game in hand to get within 7. Chelsea are just becoming an absolutely dominant force that Manchester City were at the beginning of the save. Currently, Manchester City in 7th. It is not going well for Vincent Kompany. I was really happy with that hiring at the beginning of the video. But it's not going very well, is it? I mean, even with a win, they'd get within 4 points of Newcastle, actually, who are genuinely 4th. Because even if Manchester United win their game in hand, that's only within 2 points of Newcastle. So, the managerial change has gone really well. Simone Inzaghi is having a great time. We see Villa on 29, Spurs 30, Leicester 30. Though Leicester do have a game in hand to get a bit closer to Europe. I say that. Not really, because everyone else above them has a game in hand too. Burnley actually have a game in hand, which, with all things going well, could get them within about 2 points of Europe. So maybe keep an eye on Burnley. Then the gap kind of comes from Burnley to Everton. There's a 5-point gap there. Again, Reading with a game in hand could close in a little bit. So I think the surprises so far, Newcastle taking to Simone Inzaghi so well. Leeds carrying on from where they left off last year. And Spurs are just Spursing it up again. They're down in 9th. And then maybe Fulham and Brentford are slight surprises, because, I mean, they've performed reasonably okay, but I'm not particularly shocked by them being down there. We're only going to take a real quick look at the player stats. We see Erling Haaland still tops the goal-scoring charts with 15, now being chased by Kylian Mbappe and Daniel Jebbison. Is it Daniel Jebbison? Yes, Daniel Jebbison. For half a second, I thought I got his name wrong. Yeah. Haaland leads, Mbappe and Jebbison chasing. So Mbappe's back to actually scoring goals because Havertz is providing the assists. He's there with 9, but Bruno Fernandes leads the way on 11. And Ndidi on 8. Go on, Wilfred. Good man. Haaland and Sakir up there for Player of the Match awards, with Sakir level with Edouard Mendy for most clean sheets with 10. And that is where the Premier League stands going into 2027. Our next stop-off point is going to be in a month's time, where we'll get to have a look at how the January transfer window goes for Premier League clubs, and just how January runs for them match-wise as well. We've now let forward to 3rd of February 2027 to make sure that the transfer window has indeed closed. It closed on the 1st of February, it would appear, with one of the big transfers that has gone down in this January transfer window. You'll notice the top 2 are from this window. So some sides trying to make a push for Champions League football here. Manchester United, for only, I'd say, the second time, really splashing out on a player. They got Bukayo Saka not too long ago for around £120 million. The money goes out again, £96 million on Dominic Szoboszlai. I've probably said that wrong. I do apologise. I've given it a go at least. Has made 3 appearances since for Manchester United. Was having really, really good seasons at RB Leipzig. So I'm not surprised by the big transfer fee. Hopefully, can he push United into being maybe title contenders in the next 2 or 3 years? I don't know. Chelsea just feel that powerful at the moment that I don't see who is going to knock them off. The second biggest transfer of the January window, Newcastle, who obviously are really pushing for Champions League football this year. They bring in Gonzalo Ramos from Benfica for £67 million. He had 18 goals in 20 games this season. He has been smashing them in Liga NOS for a while. And yet it's taken until now for anybody to actually buy him. I mean, 67 million is a lot. And statistically, he doesn't look like the world-class, world-beating forward. But he's playing so well that you kind of just can't ignore that. So eventually, Newcastle will decide to bring him in. They get their new important player. I'd almost call him a star at that point. He comes in for Newcastle. We actually see João Felix and Sergio Reguilon heading to Barcelona. So Barcelona are not messing about anymore. After they saw Real Madrid bring in Rodri in the summer, Barca wants some of the Premier League action. Felix and Reguilon. Not bad moves there, especially for how much I think Man City may have lost on João Felix. Yep. They lost £80 million on João Felix. He played 29 times in like 3.5 years. Some transfers I cannot understand in this game. That's one of them. £80 million lost. This is why Man City are going backwards. But what else can we find 2027-wise? That one's kind of thrown me for a loop, really. Spurs going big on Brenner from Real Madrid. Obviously, he begins life at Cincinnati in the MLS. RB Leipzig actually then shelled out the same amount Cincinnati paid for him in the first place to bring him to Germany. And then Real Madrid double that to bring him to Spain. And Spurs slightly more than double that to bring him to the Premier League. Has already got a goal since he joined. I mean, he is an exceptionally good player sometimes in FM. So Spurs hope to then get that out of him. Arsenal spending £40 million on 23-year-old Brazilian forward Marcus Leonardo. So they go Brazilian as well, but a good 4 years younger. And he actually scored on his Premier League debut off the bench. So that's pretty good signs for him coming in from Juventus, who got him for £12 million from Santos. We scroll down more, we actually find another out from the Premier League. A player we did mention when he transferred in, Igor Diviv, leaves Arsenal. He heads to Serie A with Juventus. A little bit of a loss there for Arsenal, I believe, on that transfer. About £10 million down the drain there. Spurs bringing in another player, £30 million for Pablo Maffeo. Now, he is 29. So a slightly older player, but for £30 million, he's going to give you pretty good solid rotation, which is probably what Spurs need at this point. They maybe don't have the depth that they really need to compete for Europe. So they're going to look to do it with Pablo Maffeo. We see Leeds making a £30 million transfer. They want to get Champions League football again. Though it's actually a goalkeeper, interestingly. It's Dominic Grief, a Slovakian goalkeeper coming in from Sporting Lisbon. Mallorca got him in 2021. Played a really good season and then a really dodgy season. And has had really good years with Sporting Lisbon. Comes in. Do Leeds still have the goalkeeper, Turkish keeper, young lad? Can't remember his name. Yeah. Ersin Destinoglu's still here. So they've actually just potentially spent £30 million on a backup? No, they're saying Grief's the important player. Wow. Half a season after Destinoglu won the Golden Glove. Did he win it or did he come second? He was up there. He got 18 clean sheets last season. They have benched him. I mean, he's not had as good a season at all. He's kind of gone back to where he was when he first joined with Leeds. But they have benched him and brought in Dominic Grief. So we may well see Destinoglu out the door in the summer. That is a very interesting situation there at Leeds, that they feel they need to make a goalkeeping change right now. Spurs with another signing, by the way. £27 million initially on Nicolas Dominguez, coming in from Porto. He's had quite an interesting time of it, actually, with Bologna playing pretty well. Then Hertha Berlin, played pretty well for a season. Inter didn't play so well. Inter lose 4 million on him for him to go to Porto, and he picks his performances up again. So he's been kind of up and down. He's started well for Spurs. It's been mostly up. It's just that one Inter Milan season. So see what Spurs can get out of all of their new signings, with Dominguez being one of them. We have to go down quite a bit further, actually, to find our next signing, which is £22 million, and is Arsenal again, with Konstantin Maradishvili coming in from Lokomotiv Moscow. Seemingly went from CSK to Lokomotiv. That feels controversial, but it was only £6 million. Has played really, really well for Lokomotiv, and Arsenal jump on the chance to bring him in at just 26 years of age. We go down a little further. Thiago Maia has left to the Championship. Brighton spending £20 million on Thiago Maia. Will we see Brighton immediately bounce back? I feel like we might. We see Amad Diallo. He left not too long ago. Yeah, he only left United in 2025, and a year and a half later, he is back in the Premier League with Sheffield United, which is a really interesting one. I mean, Sheffield United have become a pretty solid Premier League outfit, so I don't think there's too much fear of him becoming a Championship player. But that is a potentially really, really top quality player right there. They've currently only got him listed as a squad player, and at 24 years of age, I don't know how much more development he's got behind him. But that one could work out really well. I feel like that's a reasonably low-risk move. We see Norwich, who are still back in the Championship. They bring in Robin Lenormand from Chelsea, so he could be appearing again soon. Ebereeze leaves Crystal Palace. He's fed up of Championship football, though he may be back into it again soon because he's actually joined Brentford. So Eze might be playing Championship football anyway. I feel like he looks like a good player. I feel like he could have developed a little bit better. I think multiple relegations have really not helped him. We won't go too much further down. We find João Palhinha leaving the Premier League. We find Diogo Queiroz leaving the Premier League to go to the Championship. Somebody who is joining, though, is Villa's biggest transfer in January. Jason Sanchez coming in from Maritimo. Don't know why it's decided to take an absolute age here. Here we go. And it's actually our first new-gen player that we find. This is the first one that we've looked at that's actually been a full-on transfer. So that is good to see. Now we've reached 2027. We're going to find some new-gen guys. Jason Sanchez is the biggest move. Joins Villa. They have bought relatively young Aston Villa. So interesting to see them go with that again. Has made an appearance and actually did start as well. Played pretty well. Coming in, actually, Maritimo got him on a free from America de Cali in Colombia. So that's good all round from Maritimo and Aston Villa, I'd say there. But good to see a new gen player popping up. Manchester United spending £9.5 million on Andres Lines. Again, another new gen player. And this one's listed as a wonder kid. So maybe get used to the name Andres Lines. We may well be seeing his name a hefty amount. 9.5 million for a wonder kid has been pretty spectacular for Malaga. Even in his first season in La Liga as well, which has been the first half of this season, he's looked pretty good. He's made the steps up when they've been required. His mentals are incredible. I mean, you'd love the bravery to be higher. If he's going to be a defensive midfielder, which I don't think he is with 7 tackling, I think he's definitely more of a creative player. I mean, 17 vision, 15 passing, 14 first touch. This is a creative midfielder. I don't know why it seems to think he's a CDM. He's definitely not. But Andreas Wein, so let's keep a tab on that name in the next few videos. As we see Bournemouth, their biggest transfer of the window is Dimitris Nicolaou coming in from FC Porto. Porto make the tiniest profit ever on him, but it's something. Went from Empoli to Spezia, Spezia to Porto. Now joins the Premier League. We'll find a couple more if we can find some teams that we haven't really mentioned yet. Burnley's biggest move is to head to Norwich to bring in Paulo Diaz on deadline day. 32-year-old Chilean centre-back. Interesting choice from Burnley there. You see Harry Souttar leaving Crystal Palace. He goes to Fulham. Charlie Cresswell heads to the Championship. Southampton bringing in Josh Wilson-Esbrand from Everton. Wasn't really playing for Everton. They got him for 2.6 million from Man City. Now Southampton bringing in. Not a player I'm very familiar with. And then Everton also bringing in Alphonse Samsted, an Icelandic right-back from Getafe. Okay then. That's where we'll hold that. Let's have a quick look at the Premier League table before we advance on to April. Chelsea's still leading the way, and it is a 7-point gap, as it sort of was previously, to Liverpool. But now Manchester City have pushed themselves all the way back up to 3rd. And it's on the back of Erling Haaland, who has 22 Premier League goals. It's the Erling Haaland coming out party this season. He's proving that he's one of the best forwards in the world. And interesting to see Mbappe up there as well with 15. We're seeing the 2 big names starting to take over the goal-scoring charts. Oh, and just Daniel Jebison, for a second season, is up there right at the top of the scoring charts. Man City have actually played a game more. So Newcastle and Arsenal, but Arsenal are 20 goals behind them. So Newcastle can actually pass them. We look to the bottom of the table. Brentford have only added 1 more point in the next 5 games. Brentford are in big trouble. It might be 4 games, actually. I can't remember who played 20 and who played 21. Fulham and Southampton. Fulham have recovered a little bit. They've picked up 4 points. They're now within 4 points of Bournemouth. Reading have definitely slipped backwards since Benny McCarthy left. John Terry. I don't think I ever confirmed that, actually. John Terry's Reading manager. Let me have a quick look at that. Did I just... Yeah. Because he came in between save points. I should have confirmed that in the January section. I just completely forgot and I missed it. You will have seen it if you were looking at the screen on the January section when I was looking at managers. But yeah, John Terry is Reading manager. Let's see if he can keep him up, because it's not started well for him. If we look sort of mid-table, you've got your Sheffield United, your Burnley, West Ham in their first season back doing well, Everton in there as well. But we can jump forward to April now. We'll take a look at how Europe is going for the English clubs that are still in it, which is actually all of them that started in it, which is going well. And then we'll have another look back at the Premier League and we'll run through some stats as well. Happy April Fool's Day. We've simmed forward to April 1st, 2027. And we're first going to take another look at Europe into the quarter-final stages for all 3 competitions. Europa Conference League, Blackburn are still going. They came in at the second knockout round and actually got drawn against the side that they were in a group with in Malta Havar, which seems a little bit strange. But Blackburn come through that 4-2 and they will now face the Young Boys in the quarterfinals. That is going to be a much trickier tie, also considering Young Boys have come through against FC Köln, a side that Football Manager normally quite likes. So I think this might be the end of the road for Blackburn, though there is a potential that if they can get through, they could play Celtic in the semi-finals, which would be a very interesting tie. Going up to the Europa League, we see the first knockout round where Leeds United came in after they came down from the Champions League. They actually overcame Dynamo Kiev 4-2, which I thought would be a quite tricky one. And then they've come through against Sporting Lisbon as well, 6-3. So a really good run for Leeds, though it makes for an interesting quarter-final because Arsenal overcame Roma 3-2 in the last 16 stage. And now Leeds and Arsenal will meet in the quarterfinals of the Europa League. It's less good fortune for Manchester United. They come in at the last 16 stage and they are knocked out by Real Sociedad on penalties after a 4-4 draw on aggregate. Real Sociedad will go on to play Porto. You see Real Madrid are still in here. Hertha Berlin, who just have all the money, they come through on penalties as well. Fiorentina came through on penalties. A very dramatic last 16 stage in the Europa League. But Manchester United out, and Leeds and Arsenal have to play each other. And finally, the Champions League knockout stages, just the last 16 to talk about here. Liverpool come through against Barcelona on penalties, but it sets up a quarter-final tie with Manchester City, who sneak through 4-3 against Sevilla. Less lucky, though, for Leicester, who fall only by 1 goal to Bayern Munich, 3-2 on aggregate. I count that as pretty impressive. The final Premier League side to look at, Chelsea, they come through against Atletico Madrid 4-2. They will take on Benfica in the quarters. Less lucky for Liverpool and Man City, though, as they have to play each other. And into the Premier League, just the one managerial change since we last left off. Scott Parker has been sacked by Bournemouth. They stuck by him for a very, very long time in the save, but he has gone in the last sort of week and a half or so. Currently have a caretaker manager, so I must actually remember to check who they hire when we get to the final day of the season. This is how the Premier League table stands going into the final run-in with around 7 or 8 games to go for each team. And all of a sudden, Liverpool they're closing in on Chelsea. They've got within a point, but Chelsea do have a game in hand to go 4 points clear. So it's still in Chelsea's hands. It's very much under their control. But Liverpool have closed in a little bit. You then see a massive gap back to Manchester City and Arsenal, though Manchester City with a game in hand. And actually Newcastle still have a game in hand to get back into 4th. I think it was to go up to 3rd or 4th previously. So Newcastle just seem to always have a game in hand. Man United rocking in 6th, though we seem to have, well, no, we haven't. I was going to say we seem to have lost 7th again, but actually the EC2 would suggest that Manchester City have won the League Cup final. So yes, just to confirm, Manchester City did indeed win the League Cup final. They ended up winning 3-1 against Arsenal in a reasonably comfortable game. Bernardo Silva scoring early. Marcus Leonardo actually then made it 1-1 before Erling Haaland struck back immediately. Couple of injuries for Manchester City to deal with through the game. They lose Charles and Delap. But then Gabriel Jesus puts the icing on the cake. And Manchester City playing a 4-4-2. How many people would have thought that? But playing the 4-4-2, they end up winning the League Cup final. It doesn't really affect too much. They're already a Champions League team by the looks of it. Getting back to the Premier League and looking to the bottom of the table, and it is not looking good for Brentford, Fulham, and actually Bournemouth. You can see why they've sacked Scott Parker. Southampton have gone on an absolute tear and are now 5 points clear of the relegation zone. They stick by Roberto Martinez, and he has potentially brought them to safety. They still need a few more points. I don't think 27 is going to keep you up. I think Wolves and Reading potentially still need a few more points as well. Even Everton and West Ham maybe need a couple more. But anything above that, I think Sheffield United, Burnley, likes them, they're all safe. Spurs, Leicester, Leeds, still competing for Europe, though Manchester United and Newcastle do have a game in hand. So it may come down to a 3-team battle for the EC2 spot for 7th. But as we have done when we get to April, we'll also take a look at some team and individual player stats. Starting quickly with the team stats, we find Chelsea top scorers in the Premier League with 72. Pretty unsurprising there. Man City and Liverpool trailing them. Chelsea also with the highest XG4 at 62.1, which they're actually outdoing by 10, which is pretty impressive. If we look down to conceded, we actually find two teams. It is Chelsea and Newcastle conceding just 23 goals, and then Liverpool conceding 24. So three teams doing pretty well there, and it's probably why Newcastle are up in fifth, is because their defence has actually been the thing that they have relied on. We look to the bottom for goals conceded. We find Brentford conceding the most. That makes sense. And then Bournemouth and Fulham filling out the other two spots. Again, makes a lot of sense. Though Reading actually have the highest XG against at almost 56. And they've only conceded 48. So with their first season back in the Premier League, they might stay up, but they're slightly riding the luck a little bit. Getting into the individual player stats, starting with the race for the Golden Boot, and it's not really much of a race, to be honest. Erling Haaland out there with 24 in 30 games. He is 6 clear of two Chelsea players in Vinicius and Romelu Lukaku, who has just appeared out of nowhere. He's now up on 18 goals. And Gabriel Barbosa there on 18 as well. A man who's regularly appeared in the top sort of 10 of Premier League goal scorers. Kylian Mbappe and Daniel Jefferson are still there, but they've now slipped to joint 5th with 17 each. Then we get the likes of Odsonne Edouard, Moise Kean. Liam Delap starting to become a more regular player for Manchester City. So him and Haaland combining for 37 Premier League goals. Not a bad job, though. Vinicius, Lukaku and Mbappe combining for over 50 Premier League goals between the three of them. We see Vitinha's here again. Neil Maupay's got 11 for Reading, which is very impressive. We see Jimenez is still going at 35. That's good to see. And Alexander Isak has 9. I feel like he kind of just vanished off the map. I haven't mentioned him for a little bit, but Alexander Isak is there on 9. Haaland leading XG as well. We see shots. He's leading that. He's leading shots on target. He's leading everything in order to get him his first Premier League Golden Boot. We get down to assists. We find Bruno Fernandes still leading that one, and he has gone way, way clear on 16. He is ahead of Ndidi and Havertz on 10. We see Yeremy Pino. Erling Haaland has 9 assists, as well as his 24 goals. Haaland is definitely the player of the year. We can get into key passes as well. We actually find Burnley's Yassine Adli, someone we did mention earlier on in the season. He now leads the way with 53 key passes, ahead of Tariq Lamptey in his first season with Newcastle. It might be his second season. It's definitely his second season. That's my bad. Lamptey's second season with Newcastle. He is up there on key passes. Raheem Sterling still going strong at 32. Rashford's up there, and someone I'm not too familiar with in Houssem Sarau has come to Southampton a while ago from RB Salzburg rather. They bought him when they were in the Championship, and he's performed okay in the Premier League. He's decent actually in his now second season with Southampton in the Premier League. I may have said that this was Southampton's first season back. If I did, again, I'm wrong on that one. I'm not doing very well on getting things right. You can see some other names on here. Reece James, who's normally more in the defensive categories. He's here on key passes. Get down to the bottom, we find Ryan Christie at 32 years of age. Ricardo Esgao at 33. Some of the older players still stepping up to put in some good performances. Chances created, Bruno Fernandes leads that as well at 19. Morgan Gibbs-White actually in second with 15 and just 2 assists. So Gibbs-White having a pretty good season for Wolves, now 27 years of age. He's actually just played really, really well for Wolves. He's kind of been an unsung hero in that squad that hasn't particularly performed very well. Maybe a big transfer on the horizon for Gibbs-White, though it hasn't come to fruition yet, unfortunately, for him. If we look to defensive statistics, I mentioned, well, yep, James Justin, he's there again. He's normally up here, as is Kelgari. He's becoming a regular here, and Tariq Lamptey as well. So likes of Harry Pickering, Victor Christensen, just some names that we've seen regularly. Henry Lawrence, another name we've seen a lot of. There is Reece James, as previously mentioned. We can see Emerson, who I think led the league in interceptions one year, a few years back. Trent doing some defensive work as well. We see key tackles. We've got two guys leading that one in Reece James and James Justin. That doesn't surprise me. They've been up there almost every season, just putting in brilliant defensive performances. Key headers is actually led by someone I'm not familiar with. Louis Binks joined Reading from Bologna. Actually, another English player that went to Bologna. They seem to have made a thing of getting British players in. Came over to Reading in the Championship. This is his first season in the Premier League. And again, he's played okay. He's made a decent adjustment to Premier League football. So well done to him. Interceptions is James Justin. Blocks is Reece James. Again, completely unsurprising. Aliena still leads fouls with 65. If we look to goalkeepers, it's still two goalkeepers battling it out for the Golden Glove. It's still Ergusan Shakir, but he's now joined by Allison, who returns to the top of the charts in clean sheets. They are both two ahead of Edouard Mendy and Aaron Ramsdale, who are on 12. Edison there on 11. Joe Bursick leading both save categories. But, as I've mentioned, my new favourite goalkeeping stat, my new favourite stat in general, the XG prevented. Allison up at a massive 12. That might be the highest that we've seen in this save since I've started looking at this stat. Edouard Mendy's up at around the 10 mark with Ergusan Shakir. Angus Gunn actually having a really good season for Reading. He's one of the reasons that Reading look like they should well stay up. Juan Musso having a much better year as previously mentioned. But Jack Walton's actually done a little bit of goalkeeping for Reading as well. How many games has Walton played? He's played 12. And Gunn has played about 18 then? 22. There's been some sub-appearances in there, haven't there? That always confuses me. The rating for Gunn, though, is pretty low. He's not been very highly rated when he's played, but Walton's rating has been pretty good. I mean, 3 sub-appearances. I never understand why there are so many goalkeeper sub-appearances in the simulation. We actually find Manchester United using a new-gen goalkeeper that came through their academy, Joshua Le Carpentier, has played 4 times, which actually records him as being on the list. He's not played very well, and he does have a minus XG prevented. Nick Pope's still Burnley's keeper, although he might not be. Matej Kovar was signed for 1.3 million. He's played 7 times. So there's a lot of teams that are kind of alternating goalkeepers. Like Matvey Safonov is back in goal for Spurs again. There's a lot of keeper changes going on. Keller has played enough for Liverpool to get in on the stats as well. Daniel Iverson playing for West Ham, he's not had a fun time. It seems like there's a lot more goalkeeper alternations than I would expect to see, but whatever the game wants to do. But we can jump ahead now to the final day of the Premier League season, where we'll just set the scene for what could happen on that final day. And then when we jump forward past that, we'll look into everything. So Europe, how the Premier League ends, and also player stats and team stats once again. We've now made the final day of the Premier League season. And as mentioned, we're going to take a quick look at managerial changes because we knew that Bournemouth had a job vacancy. And it's a massive surprise. Roberto De Zerbi has left Leicester to join Bournemouth, which is a managerial change that I cannot wrap my head around. Like, last season, he won the Europa League with Leicester, gained Champions League football, makes the knockout stages, has his team in prime position to fight for Europe again, and then leaves to Bournemouth, who could go down. It may have changed, they may be safe, but the time he joined them, they were very much in danger. Mini rant over. That does mean that Leicester are looking for a new manager and have been for about a month. They've decided to go with Ian Corley as caretaker to finish out the season. Has that messed Leicester up in their hunt for Europe? Potentially. The other change, Brentford, as you can see, are relegated. So that is confirmed. Benny McCarthy was sacked upon the relegation. So Brentford go through Sean Dyche and Benny McCarthy this season. Dave Smith, currently the caretaker, seeing out the very end of the season. We probably won't see who they appoint because they'll be in the Championship. But if Brentford do come back again, then we'll find out. It ends a run of 4 straight Premier League seasons. So we will be seeing, obviously we'll be seeing 3 new teams, but we'll be seeing a new side. Heading into the final day, this is how the Premier League table looks. Chelsea are your runaway champions in the end. Liverpool just could not keep pace. Chelsea are on for a 98-point season if they can beat Leeds United on the final day. However, Leeds have something to play for. They have 7th place and an EC2 spot on the line. If they can somehow beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge and Spurs drop points at home against Fulham, Leeds would have a shot at EC2. Leicester also have a shot. In fact, they're on the same points and same goal difference as Leeds, which is quite fun. Leicester host Newcastle, who have already confirmed Europa League football. Newcastle could still finish 5th. I mean, that's a matter of just getting a little bit more money as your reward. Confirmed Champions League, Liverpool, Manchester City and Arsenal. It's a little bit back to more normal teams than we saw this season with having Leicester and Leeds in there. But if we look to the bottom of the table, we've got quite a final day. Wolves have just gone down the pan. I mean, they were never particularly doing well, but they were reasonably clear. However, they've been completely dragged into this. And look at this. 3 teams on 29 points and 2 on minus 29, 1 on minus 30. We know that Fulham have to go to Spurs, and Spurs have to get a result as well, potentially. So Fulham look like they're probably down, which then gives us Bournemouth and Wolves. Bournemouth head to West Ham. West Ham are safe, but they're only in 15th. So that is a very winnable game for Bournemouth. Wolves looks like they're at home. They are at home against Arsenal. Now, Arsenal have finished 4th. They're not going to finish any higher than that. I mean, points-wise they could, but the goal difference is insanely in Manchester City's favour. So let's just say Arsenal are 4th. They've got nothing to play for. But it's FM. Arsenal are not going to put out a reserve squad unless they made the Champions League final, which I've not checked, so I do not know. We'll check that actually after the end of the season, but before we check how it ended, if that makes sense. So I think Bournemouth might be the side with the best chance here. There is actually a situation where Fulham could stay up even if they lose. If Fulham were to only lose by 1 goal and Bournemouth and Wolves lost by 3 each, Fulham would stay up by losing, which seems completely ridiculous for the side in 19th. But I am fully invested in that bottom of the table battle. Fulham v Bournemouth v Wolves. 2 will go down, 1 will stay up. Congratulations, by the way, to Reading. John Terry able to right the ship after Benny McCarthy ditched them partway through the season. Ended up being for Brentford, who went down and Benny McCarthy got sacked. So that went well. Well done, John Terry, for righting the ship. He keeps Reading up, and they will have a 2nd Premier League season in a row. Sheffield United performing well again. Burnley pushing on a little bit. They are slowly improving under Dean Smith. But other than that, I think we are ready to jump to the end of the season We're going to have a look at Europe. We'll have a look at the FA Cup. And then obviously we will have a look at how the Premier League table shapes up after the final day. We've now simmed forwards to the 30th of May, 2 weeks on from the end of the Premier League, because now every competition involving English clubs is done. We're going to start with the Europa Conference League with Championship's Blackburn Rovers, and they actually had a pretty good run. I mean, the semi-finals before a 3-2 defeat to Udinese. They also actually overcame Young Boys 3-2 as well, but they go out. And the final saw Udinese lose in extra time to Denmark's FC Copenhagen. So a Danish winner of a European club competition. We check into the Europa League and we knew that Leeds and Arsenal had to play each other, and they were the last representation for the Premier League. It was actually Leeds that smashed Arsenal 6-2, surprisingly, on aggregate. They then came through against Ajax 3-2, but they fall 1-0 in the final to FC Porto, who win the Europa League. I mean, they did beat Real Madrid 5-2 in the semi-finals. After Real, by the way, 7-1 over Hertha Berlin. They would have been huge favourites at that point in a tournament alongside Porto, Ajax and Leeds. But it's FC Porto that win another European club competition. And then going up to the Champions League, and once again an all-Premier League final. A Premier League club wins the Champions League. I think that's happened every single season in this save, and Chelsea win it yet again with a 3-2 win over Liverpool. We'll take a look at how that went down. First of all, Liverpool overcoming Manchester City in the quarterfinals 3-2. Chelsea overcoming Benfica 3-1. Then Liverpool and Chelsea overcoming both Milan sides, Inter and AC. Liverpool by 3-1 over Inter, Chelsea 4-1 over AC Milan. And as mentioned, we'll take a quick look at how the final went down, because a 3-2 Champions League final is a hell of a game. Rafael Leao only lasts 3 minutes before an injury. Lukaku puts Chelsea in front. Camavinga made it 2 before Odsonne Edouard and Luis Diaz pulled Liverpool back into the game to 2-2, but an 82nd minute Romelu Lukaku penalty wins the Champions League for Chelsea. Lukaku is not young. He's just turned 34, and he's still absolutely dominating. I think he might be nearing Alan Shearer's goal-scoring record. That might be something I check at some point. He's got to be getting close. So actually, I didn't want to leave that on a cliffhanger. I've actually just totaled up Romelu Lukaku's Premier League goals. He's only 3 goals behind Alan Shearer's record of 260 Premier League goals. Lukaku has 257. If he stays at Chelsea for this next season, he is more than likely to become the top goal scorer in Premier League history. What a glow up for Lukaku. The other competition for us to look at is, of course, the FA Cup, and Manchester City actually take their second piece of silverware. They win the League Cup final. They win the FA Cup final as well. They beat Chelsea 3-1. So Chelsea get a Premier League and a Champions League. I think they can still be pretty happy with that. It was an Erling Haaland hat-trick that wins it for Manchester City. There was a late consolation goal from Vinicius Jr. Doesn't really mean anything. Manchester City get a second trophy on the season. And so finally, we round up the Premier League. The important points to talk about first. We've already spoken about Chelsea, we've spoken about Champions League. The EC2 spot goes to Tottenham. They finally have European football once again. It's taken a while, but they are back. Spurs beat Fulham 1-0. In the end, they actually could have lost, and they still would have got it, because Leeds end up drawing 2-2 at Chelsea, and Leicester lose 3-1 at home against Newcastle. So Spurs had it anyway, but they put a little cherry on top with the win over Fulham. That win relegates Fulham Bournemouth, the other side relegated after a 2-2 draw with West Ham, and Wolves clutch out a 2-1 win at home against an Arsenal side that weren't playing for anything. Wow, Eddie Howe just keeps Wolves up. They went behind to Arsenal, but Morgan Gibbs-White and Dominik Yankov ends up being the hero for Wolves. I'm not sure if a draw would have kept them up. It might have. It would have been very, very close. But obviously, Yankov's goal is the important one. It's the one that gives them the win. Wow. I'm very surprised Wolves won that game. I thought Bournemouth were the side that could stay up. If they don't score that goal and they draw, I think both sides would have been on 30 points and they both would have had a minus 29 goal difference. And at the time, Wolves were ahead of Bournemouth anyway. So I think the Gibbs-White goal is technically the goal that kept Wolves up. But obviously Yankov's just made them a lot more comfortable. Reading end up actually finishing 14th because they beat Brentford 3-0 on the final day. We get Burnley in 11th, so they sort of top the mid-table. Although Villa actually really top it because they were 10 behind Leicester. So we've kind of got a 9 at the moment. We've got the big 6 you'd expect, and then we've got Newcastle, Leeds and Leicester. That seems to be our sort of our regular top 9 now. And then Villa are sort of stranded in the middle. They're the 10th team. And then anybody below that can kind of finish anywhere. But we say goodbye to Brentford, who we mentioned, they'd had 4 straight seasons. They're now gone. Fulham had 3 straight Premier League seasons, and they are now gone. So Josip Ilicic comes in, doesn't change much. They did get it down to the final day, but unfortunately they are not able to stay up. And the strangest managerial move that I still do not understand. Roberto De Zerbi leaves Leicester, who finished 9th, goes to Bournemouth and gets relegated. There's got to be something with this Bournemouth squad or something that Bournemouth have done that makes this worth it. I guess we'll find out as we go along the seasons. Bournemouth, it was their first season back. They go straight back down. But West Ham and Reading stay up. And Reading surprisingly do the best out of the newly promoted sides. So well done to them. If we look up, we find what we already knew. Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal will all play Champions League football. Manchester United and Newcastle will be the Europa League representatives. And Spurs, finally back in Europe, they will be the Premier League representative in the Europa Conference League. Manager movements, we don't need to worry about Brentford for next season because they'll be in the Championship. But Leicester still on their manager hunt at the moment. We'll find out who they hire at the beginning of next video. What we can do is get into the team and player stats. Now we are at the end of the season. Unsurprisingly, Chelsea top the scoring charts with 95 goals as a team. Manchester City there on 83, which really helped in their recovery to making the Champions League this year. Liverpool up there on 74 as well, and then a bit of a gap back to the likes of Man United, Leeds, Newcastle, and you've got a bunch of teams kind of around that 50 mark. Chelsea topping the XG as well. If we look to goals conceded, it was actually Liverpool who conceded the least, but only by 1 ahead of Chelsea. And then Arsenal in there with only conceding 35, which helps them reach Champions League football for the first time in a little while. We look to XG, Reading with the most against, yet they were only 14th in goals conceded, and quite a big gap to the likes of Everton, Sheffield United. And then the bottom 4 were the bottom 4. So Wolves only conceding 62 actually keeps them up in the end. Brentford conceding the most at 68. If we have a look at least goals scored as well, I seem to be skipping that stat for some reason. Fulham and Brentford were just 32. Southampton stay up but only score 33, and then Wolves and Bournemouth joint on 34. It was literally conceding one less goal that kind of kept Wolves up. I know it was a 2-point gap in the end, but still kind of works. We head to the individual player stats, and it is a first Premier League Golden Boot for Erling Haaland as he bags 29 Premier League goals. I think that's the most we've seen a player get in a season in the save. Somehow Lukaku, by the way, getting second and only 2 behind Haaland. He really made a big case for trying to win a 4th straight Golden Boot. It doesn't happen, but as I've already mentioned, he's only now 3 away from tying Alan Shearer's goal record in the Premier League. He's on 257, so he's pretty close. Vinicius actually gets 23 as well for Chelsea, which is very impressive. Mbappe slowed down towards the end. He gets 18 goals. We've got Odsonne Edouard having a 20-goal season for Liverpool, which is extremely impressive. Moise Kean with a 19-goal season for Villa. See Liam Delap getting 15. Vitinha's still kind of there. He's slowing down a little bit. Only 13 this time. He's still being absolutely brilliant for Leeds. Salah just sneaking on, as is Alexander Isak. And Ivan Toney sneaking in with 12, despite Brentford coming last and being relegated. As we've mentioned, shots on target, Haaland leading them all. We go down to assists. Bruno Fernandes does indeed top that one. We know he had a decent lead. The lead did shrink. He ends up with 18 assists ahead of Kai Havertz's 15. And then we get 3 guys, 2 Man City players in Yeremy Pino and Erling Haaland with 11. And Wilfred Ndidi also getting 11 now at 30 years of age. That we're getting into this save now. Like Cole Palmer's 25. We're getting into this save at the moment. We've got Dele Alli up here with 9, Frank Kessie as well, Reece James at 9. Yassine Adli finally actually getting some assists as well as key passes. Get Yunus Musa sneaking on at the back end there. If we look to key passes, we actually find Marcus Rashford topping that statistic with 66 key passes, though just 4 assists. Raheem Sterling 65 and just 2 assists. So Bruno Fernandes actually only 3rd in key passes, but tops the assist chart. And let's all feel horribly sorry for Rico Henry, who had 57 key passes and not a single assist. If we go to chances created, Bruno Fernandes does top that one, which makes a lot of sense. Morgan Gibbs-White in 2nd and getting just 2 assists. Somebody get this man a striker. I mean, he's had Jimenez through most of the seasons. He's now 35. Get him a new striker, Wolves. You've nearly been relegated. You've got Eddie Howe now. Let's sort out what we're doing, okay? Help Gibbs-White. It's actually been technically his worst season. It could have been one of his best, let's be honest. It's the first time we've seen him this high. So, Wolves, you may well need a new striker, lads. We get Martin Odegaard, Jorge De Frutos, and Kai Havertz up here as well on the assists. We get 2 defensive stats. Vitaly Mykolenko actually tops tackles in the end, with Sergio Gomez and James Justin in 2nd. Raheem Sterling, there's always one forward high in the tackle stats. Raheem Sterling is the man this year. I don't know why there's always one. Interceptions made is led by James Justin. Blocks, Reece James. A couple guys we've seen a lot of. Luis, is it Luis or Louis? Or Lewis? I don't know. Binks topping the shots blocked. Then key tackles is topped by Reece James ahead of James Justin. Key headers was actually 3 guys. Roger Ibanez, Mr. Binks, and Ruben Diaz actually topping those ones. And finally, for this season, we'll check out some goalkeeper statistics. And we actually have a draw. Though, I think the award goes to Alisson for playing 4 less games than Shaqiri. I'm going to give it to Alisson. If I've got that wrong, and if it's done by a different stat, It could be done unconceded, in which case Alisson still wins anyway. So I'm giving the Golden Glove to Alisson for this season. Shaqiri is a very, very close second. And then Mendy and Ramsdale just one clean sheet behind on 15 each, as they have pretty good years. Fulham relegated, unfortunately, so that is goodbye Joe Bursick, though he tops both save stats. And then we'll check out my favourite stat, the XG prevented. Alisson tops that at 14.5. That is absolutely insane from Alisson. We get Edouard Mendy in second and Ergusan Shaqiri in third. Angus Gunn's still fourth, by the way, in that stat, which is very, very impressive. And Jack Walton, actually, nearing a 5. So both Gunn and Walton combined, preventing over 11 goals. They could be the reason that Reading actually stayed up this season, which is very, very impressive. We've got two Burnley keepers right next to each other in Kovar and Adan. If we look down towards the bottom, we actually find that Joe Bursick didn't have the best of years. You see, Dominic Grief didn't do great for Leeds either. He did not have a great job taking over. Although, to be fair, their other keeper, who I keep forgetting his name, the Turkish lad, Destinoglu, isn't on there at all. And he definitely played enough games to be on that list. So he had a shocker of a season. He's actually wanted by Arsenal and Sheffield United. So we could see him move to another Premier League side. I just don't think he'll be the starting keeper in that case. Because, I mean, Arsenal have got Aaron Ramsdale. He could start for Sheffield United, though, because, again, none of their goalkeepers are on this list. So they've had pretty bad seasons as well. But Sheffield United have still finished 12th. So, they could improve quite quickly. Could Sheffield United become a team fighting for Europe? That might be a stretch. I mean, 20 points off Spurs. I don't think a goalkeeper's going to gain you 20 points. But that is officially the end of the 2026-27 season. It's season 5 in the simulation. Chelsea retain the Premier League title. They also win another Champions League. Manchester City do get a League Cup and an FA Cup to make them feel a little bit better, though. It will be Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City and Arsenal in the Champions League. Man United and Newcastle in the Europa League. Spurs in the Europa Conference League. And for now, we say goodbye to Bournemouth, Fulham and Brentford. Storylines going into next season. Lukaku potentially breaking Alan Shearer's goal-scoring record in the Premier League. He's just 3 away from tying it, 4 from breaking it. Can anyone break into the top 9? It seems Leeds, Leicester and Newcastle have joined the Big 6. Can somebody like Villa, Burnley, Sheffield United, Everton, can someone make that big jump up to break into there? Not even necessarily Europe. Just get in the top 9, lads. Let's have something a bit different. Spurs, how do they get on in their first time in Europe for a good few years? And can Chelsea three-peat the Premier League title? Or can Liverpool or Manchester City catch up to them? Find out in the next video. If you have made it all the way through this one, thank you so much. I hope you have enjoyed it. Next one will be out in the next few days. If you have enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button, like the video, share it out, and I will catch you in the next one.